Okay, hello everybody, and thank you to coming to Sustainable Claremont's dialogue for this month here in November. I just wanted to give a couple of announcements first before we get started, and then I'll introduce our guest who we're very excited to have speak with us tonight. And we'll take questions at the end, and so it should be a really great dialogue tonight. A couple of things before we get going. We do have another dialogue coming up in 2 weeks. So that's on December 14th, same time, same place, 7 to 8 p.m. on Zoom. The topic is going to be passive solar, the art and science of resilient design. And we have an architect coming to tell us about some of the things that he's done in the past and some of the buildings that he's designed and how we can design buildings that integrate nature into them and natural design, and how that could be another element for a more sustainable future. Also, if you're interested in these events and you enjoy what Sustainable Claremont is doing, please feel free to sign up to our newsletter so that you are kept up to date about all of the things that are going on. So many events are still happening despite COVID, and a lot of it's happening online. So the newsletter is a great way to track that. My colleague Angela is going to go ahead and copy and paste the link to the newsletter if you want to sign up for that, if you're not signed up already, and that's going to be in the chat box. And then finally, tomorrow is December 1st. It's Giving Tuesday, and it's the launch of our year-end fundraising campaign. So we'd really appreciate any support that you all can give to us this year. It's been a challenging year for small businesses, for small community-based organizations, for all of us. So any financial support that you can help send our way so that we can continue putting on these dialogues, continue doing the outreach and the advocacy and the education on sustainability issues in the community, we would really appreciate your help. And so again, Angela is going to put in the chat box a link to our donate page. If you're able, we really appreciate all your support. So let's go ahead and get started here. So our speaker today is Yesenia Vargas, and she goes by Yessie. And she's from Energy Upgrade, California. She works with community groups, with nonprofits, small businesses, and just everyday residents to help teach about the importance of energy efficiency in our lives. She has so much more to say, so instead of going on about her bio, I'm going to go ahead and throw it to her right now. So Yessie, why don't you take the mic?
Sure. All right, let me just enable share screen. And can everyone see this? I'm seeing nods. Okay, so just gonna launch straight into it. Basically, so I'm part of Energy Upgrade California. We're a statewide campaign under the Public Utilities Commission. And our main focus is just public education about energy efficiency, what people can do in their everyday lives to both save money and save energy. And this has been made like a lot more complicated by the era that we're in. Sustainability is kind of taking a back seat almost, and we've seen this resurgence of things like single-use plastics. And even though we scaled back and we saw like lowered emissions in the first month or so of COVID, we're back to normal levels. And so it begs the question, how long is this going to last, and how can we adapt our sustainability practices to this era that we're living in? So I believe in graphics above talking, so I'm just going to start off with a quick little video and give it a second to load. But essentially, just what I want to emphasize is that this is a statewide campaign. Oftentimes when we talk about sustainability, we talk about it in the broader sense of like the environment. And so we really want to make this a point of state pride and saying like, this is what Californians are doing and what we will continue to do. So let's just play it. that is our tagline there. Keep it golden. Yes, it is slightly cheesy and I love it. Sorry, hitting the escape button. But yeah, so what we wanted to emphasize was, that this is a statewide campaign, but specifically today I'm gonna be talking about local things. Why is it playing again? Local things that people can do in the San Gabriel Valley in the Claremont area. Sorry, you guys, I really feel like a college professor here having technical issues for the first time in my life. So as the video stated, statewide initiative, we've got 39.5 million people in California. We've got more residents here than, the neighboring 16 states combined. And so whatever actions that we take aren't just affecting us, it becomes a template for the United States. Often it becomes a template internationally. And you'll see that in things like we have our own climate summit, a California with international states, with all sorts of government agencies. So we really are a model here and we want to continue that. And so this is just a quick little background because you may have heard of this campaign in a couple of other iterations before. So one of the things we find that people are familiar with is our 2013 iteration when we did direct home upgrades. So that was things like home installation, energy efficient appliances, things like that. And those are still available, but they are now done through the individual utilities themselves. So in this case, Southern California Edison. And so if you venture to their website, you can find out about all the programs like rebates that you can get when you switch to energy efficiency appliances, make upgrades around your home. But we transitioned starting in 2015 with the passage of SB 350. We transitioned more towards behavioral changes because not only is it that California has a large percentage of renters, and so we can't always make, the same kinds of upgrades. It really does depend on what your building allows. But we wanted this to be a more inclusive campaign. So we didn't want to put a price tag on sustainability for people. And so 2015 was when the state set really ambitious energy goals. We said, we want to go back to pre-1990s level greenhouse gas emissions. We want to double energy efficiency, and we want to move a third of our grid to renewables, and all of this by 2030. And the good news is we're actually on track. We're actually ahead of these goals in some ways. Last decade, and we're pretty much on track. And the issue is, of course, keeping us on track, especially in this era. So in 2017, we kind of relaunched this campaign with the tagline, "Do Your Thing," where we really emphasized like small everyday things that people could do to get started, living sustainable lifestyles. And then in 2019, we relaunched with the tagline, "Keep It Golden." So very much emphasizing state pride and that connection that we all have as Californians, the legacy of sustainability in the state, all of that. And so what we do, think of us kind of as a resource hub. So whether you're a resident looking to get started in, small everyday practices, whether you're a nonprofit looking for ways to boost your events, get resources, materials, things like that, whether you're an educational facility, whether you're a small business looking, to get maybe green certified, things like that, think of us as a kind of one-stop shop for all of that. So we provide social media. This past weekend, we did a promotion for Small Business Saturday. And so that was emphasizing, especially in this year, supporting small local businesses. And it's not just a matter of the ones that are green certified, it's that when you look at the breakdown of the carbon footprint, small businesses tend to be greener than traditional businesses because a lot of times they rely on a local supply chain. And so that brings down emissions. And so there's a lot of reasons to support them, not just, that they're an integral part of your community, but also it is actually environmentally friendly. So that's pretty much our resources. And it brings me kind of into what are residents doing? What part can you take in this? And so I will drop a link later in the chat where you can access this whole kit directly. But one of the things we offer that I think is really useful for residents, whether you're a renter or a homeowner, is just this quick home energy audit. So it lets you kind of check off, like, what am I already doing? Oh, I definitely set my thermostat for 68 in the winter. Maybe I use the fan, and there is a winter mode, so it makes sure that you don't have to use your heater as intensely during winter, things like that. But maybe I haven't ever checked my water heater. Maybe I don't know where that is actually. And so it allows you to kind of do a step-by-step, like, what am I doing for sustainability? What can I continue to do? So that is one thing you can do at home. And so, yeah, I'll drop the link about this whole kit, and it kind of takes you room by room and lets you know kind of the breakdown. So you can also see just like the numbers of what's happening. So if I switch to LED lights, which are more energy efficient and last longer than CFL or incandescent bulbs, that saves me up to maybe 33% on my lighting bill over the course of a year. So it's not just a matter of, this is good for the environment, but it's also very much about the bottom line and how sustainability isn't in a bubble. It very much intersects with, things like income, things like just general life management. And so we really want to connect that and make the issue of sustainability a holistic one. And so that kind of brings me to the main challenge, which is COVID-19. I know we're all really sick of hearing the phrase unprecedented times, but it's very much been a challenge. So we're seeing, for the first month that we had this pandemic, cars were off the road, offices were closed. And so there were all those posts that you saw of like, wow, the smog is gone. Guys, look, nature is reclaiming. But it didn't last. We're now back to the same emission levels as before. And you could argue that we're higher. Partially that is because with online ordering, there's a lot more shipments being made. That's a rise of plastic packaging. Single-use plastics are back up because you can no longer, you can't bring your reusable cup into Starbucks anymore. You have to take the plastic one. And there is, of course, the issue of like all this personal protective equipment. How do we get rid of it? Not a lot of places are recycling it just because of the biohazard element. And so do we incinerate? Do we fill landfills? So it's caused all these issues. And of course, public health takes a precedence, but we don't want to see sustainability become, go permanently on the back burner. So again, we're emphasizing behavioral changes here. So I know that for me, I'm working from home. So my electricity bill has definitely gone up to reflect the fact that I am online a lot more. And so I'm taking online classes and I'm working. So my computer is on about 18 hours out of the day. Do not feel good about that. But you can still, for instance, in the mornings when I have my Zoom calls, I'll position it so I'm facing a window. So I'm using natural light instead of, using light in the mornings. You can lower your screen's brightness as long as it's still comprehensible. You can use a power strip so that it's not permanently just plugged into the wall and using energy even while you're not using it. You can use sleep mode, power saving features. So a lot of, especially the more modern electronics will have these features built in. And so it's like these small little things that add up. And so same thing with like single-use plastics that are making a comeback. You saw very quickly people opting for reusable things. So we bought cloth face masks. Then it became an issue of how often do you have to replace those? About every 3 or 4 months. But it's still a lot better than, permanently going for a disposable every day. And of course, when you're washing those, you can hand wash them, or you can run the washer on the cold cycle. That way you're not using electricity to heat the water, especially when you're washing your clothes. If you're using the hot cycle, that's an extra, because water is such a poor conductor of heat, that's going to be an extra like 30% that you're making the machine work. And whereas if you run it on the cold cycle, your things get just as clean, but you're saving a ton on energy. If you're running the HVAC system in your home, so that's, heating, ventilation, AC, a lot of people forget to change the filters, or they'll remember, but then they don't factor in the fact that, maybe someone has allergies, or maybe we've got pets in the home. So they need to be cleaned or changed depending on your system every 3 months instead of every 6 months. So it's all these little things that maybe you might not think about, but definitely as our options for sustainability kind of narrow down in this era of COVID, they definitely add up. And so I didn't want to end it on a gloom and doom thing. So I did want to just compare. So you'll see reports on like, well, people are binge buying, and there's this rise of online orders, which means a lot more, plastic waste because of shipment, a lot more emissions because of those shipments. And that is a downside. But then on the other hand, you see this trend towards reusable products, and you see a trend towards small businesses. So even without being explicitly told, people are instinctively moving towards more sustainable practices. And like the support for small businesses, again, it's so vital for sustainability because you're buying local, you're keeping the supply chain smaller, more centralized. And the 250% increase in polymers, that is largely driven by PPE, and it's slightly inevitable, but we've also seen stronger recycling practices emerge. So that's a little more on the legislative side, what cities and counties and our state in general are doing to make sure that we don't create a new waste problem for ourselves as a result of all of this. And of course, one of the big challenges in sustainability here has been, the things that we rely on to get us information about sustainability. They usually come from colleges and from nonprofits, from community groups. So like Sustainable Claremont, shout out. But of course, nonprofits have been very impacted by this, by the pandemic. And so you see kind of not really a drawback, but there is a more limited scope of operations, especially because a lot of people, they might just have Zoom fatigue, or they might not have reliable access to internet. So the fact that events have moved online, maybe that means there's a smaller audience that can be reached. But on the other hand, we've seen an increased consciousness just happen because of this time that we're spending indoors and because of this new emphasis on public health. So sustainability, it's not as it used to be, but it's definitely still gaining a renewed importance because people are connecting it to public health, to, racial equality, to economic survival, all of that. So I do want to say that like there are these challenges in the pandemic, but it's also been pushing us to find all these solutions. So just a little tidbit of hope, I suppose, there. And so when you look to the future, like what is our society going to look like? What's California going to look like? What's our future of sustainability? You can definitely see that, remote work is probably going to be here to stay, that we're going to see this new emphasis on, buying small, buying local. Public transportation will rise again. And we will eventually, be able to go back to reusable containers and packaging. If you look at CDC and WHO guidelines, they say, the exposure to COVID via food is pretty minimal. So you can definitely continue buying from your farmer's market and buy loose instead of buying like single-use plastic packaging, things like that. But behavioral changes are still going to have such a major role. Partially because we will be in an economic recovery mode pretty much after this. And so these small everyday changes, they're going to be so vital to people because you won't be able to tell them directly after this, install this new appliance to go more sustainable. You're going to have to start off with things that are more approachable, more achievable. And it also creates this culture of sustainability. So even though we slid a little bit back, we definitely do want to showcase that, when you start off living a green life, you don't have to go like full throttle immediately. Often these things are kind of like the intro almost to going green. So as for what Energy Upgrade California can offer you, I would be remiss if I wasn't like self-promoting here. So we're going to have a series of virtual events this winter. And that can be, you can access these both live and you'll be able to access recordings afterwards. So we will be providing these links to Sustainable Claremont. but we'll have a series of DIY videos so you can see home improvement projects that you can take around the house. And this will be tailored to both renters and homeowners, because again, we don't want to put a price tag on sustainability. We don't want to exclude anyone. We'll have an energy efficiency cooking tutorial with Hot and Cool Cafe in Compton, so that'll be fun. And if your kids are looking for something to do over break, we're going to have an art tutorial with Pico Youth and Family Center. So creating like a little art piece that will remind you of energy efficiency tips. And any of you that are involved with small businesses or looking to start one, we're going to have a webinar with Sacramento Eco Fitness. They're a green certified business up north, and so they'll talk about their business model, how they marketed that, how they, started going green. They started with like small behavioral changes and built their way up, and it'll end with like a fun little virtual workout, prior to the holidays. So that's all coming up, and we can pretty much go into questions now. Right. So here's my email. If we don't get to everyone's questions and you still want to like discuss anything, you can of course feel free to email me. You can follow us on social media, and I've included a link here so you can download our resources. So this will take you to the little home sustainability checklist, so you can see, one by one, like, what am I doing? What do I need to do? And of course, we're going to have our grant program open in January. So that is for any community groups wanting to do anything around energy efficiency. So whether you're a neighborhood council, whether you're a local nonprofit, if you volunteer with a food bank and you think, hey, this could be a great project to reach people. So whatever you're working on in your community, we would love to be a part of it, and we would love to support you in that. So yeah, I'll also be sending those details over to Sustainable Claremont in January when those grants open. So yeah, we can move into questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that, Yessie. So for everyone who's participating right now, if you would like, you're able to raise your hand through the functionality on Zoom, and we can unmute you and kind of go through the questions that way. Or if you're not comfortable with that, please feel free to put your question into the chat box, and then myself or Angela can go ahead and read those. I'll ask the first questions since I have the mic right now. Let me start with a comment. One of the things that I think is so important with what Energy Upgrade California is doing, and what we try to do, is like this dual focus on like large scale systems change at the top, and at certain levels, and behavioral and individual change at the lower levels, and how oftentimes in the discourse it's one or the other, and like people complaining that just recycling is not going to do anything, and that's not enough obviously on its own, but recycling plus 10 other things starts making a dent. And so we try to do that quite a bit here at Sustainable Claremont. We had our Earth Action Week for the first time because of COVID, and we tried to call on people to do individual actions at home that don't cost money, so there's that equity consideration built in. And so hearing what you're saying about what you all are trying to do and developing these checklists, I think it's an amazing resource for people who, if they don't own their home or if they live in an apartment, but are still very sustainability minded, it's such a great tool for us all to be able to employ. So thank you for that. And sort of related to that, I'm renting a house right now. What's the low hanging fruit? What's the most underrated? What's the easiest thing that I can do to be more energy efficient?
So when you look at, like, you see a breakdown of energy use in any household, top two things, especially in California, number one is lighting, number two is HVAC. So that's AC and heating. And so you look at lighting, switching to LED bulbs is the easiest thing you can do. It's applicable to everyone, renters or homeowners. And I think I mentioned the stat before, but I mean, over the course of a year, if you use LEDs versus CFLs or incandescents, that's about a 30% savings on lighting. And so that's just one of the easiest switches you can make. If you see a bulb going out, be like, all right, that's getting replaced with an LED. And so that, I think, is like the easiest one, number one tip I always tell people to start off with.
Great, thank you. The next question comes, I think, from Angela. Angela, is yours the second one there? Would you like me to read it, or did you want to take it?
Oh, I'm happy to speak up here. I'll give you a break, Stuart. So one of my questions is kind of to follow up with what Stuart said, is about the debate about, well, my little me, what can I do to solve this huge problem of climate change? And so I'm wondering since this is a statewide initiative and you really focused on individual actions, are there any metrics tied back to the state level goals in terms of how much could individual actions build up to? With your campaign, do you have particular goals or metrics around like how much energy could be saved through some of these individual actions?
Yeah, so I don't have the exact metrics on hand, but one of the energy goals from SB 350 was doubling energy efficiency by 2030. And part of that goes back on the industry side, it's about passing new standards and about tech and all of that. With individuals, it's almost entirely about behavioral change. And so just looking at that, is essentially we're entrusting half of this goal to individuals changing their behavior. And the fact that we're actually on track to reach that goal by 2030, that just makes me all fuzzy inside. Means that, people are taking this to heart, and people have, over the past, I have to do math, 2015 to 2020, over the past 5 years, I've definitely been able to shift their behavior enough that it's been noticeable, and that, our projections have us on track to reach our energy goals by 2030.
Great.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, great question, Angela. I've got another one here lined up from Bob Garricky. This one, strikes a chord with me as a vegetarian, which is giving up meat. I'm just going to read your question, Bob. Giving up meat will apparently relieve the stresses on our planet and resources, particularly on CO2. So, like, is that a behavior change that you all emphasize or take into consideration, the sort of education and outreach about a plant-based diet or meatless Mondays or anything, in that area?
Yeah, so in a limited way, just because we're fairly new to emphasizing the diet part of sustainability, part of that in the past has been work with, small grocery stores, restaurants, food processing, because a lot of that was about, how is your facility doing energy efficiency? So if you look at like agricultural tech, it's, methane emissions or whatnot, like what capture technologies you have for this. So on the one hand, we were involved with that. And so we've only started emphasizing, the individual side of that recently. And so you can see that play out in, for instance, our upcoming webinar with Hot and Cool Cafe. It's a vegan cafe in Compton, and it's about not only, providing healthy food and about providing food with like a low carbon footprint, but also doing so in a food desert, in a place where, people might not have as much access. So we do want to definitely emphasize that. Just starting to, but that is one of the approaches we're taking. And another one is to emphasize the local food movement. So, ideally in the future, everything that you get would be coming from, a radius of, 50 miles or so, and it would be in season produce, so you wouldn't have to, spend extra water, extra tech, growing things out of season. So emphasizing like food sustainability is definitely part of it. And we would love to partner with more organizations doing that, hence the upcoming grants.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So that's something that we'll keep an eye on, because I think that, that's another, element of behavior change that's, really important, and, one that doesn't have to cost the individual money. It might, it can save people money and be a easy on-ramp for sustainability for a lot of people. So that's great. We have another here.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, what I was also going to say is that with a plant-based diet, one of the things we really like to emphasize is that it also offers these opportunities for low heat or no heat cooking, especially like in the summers. We like to emphasize, throw a salad together, throw a sandwich together. You don't have to use the stove. You don't have to take a lot of time. and you don't have to do a ton of prep work. So that's another one of like the energy benefits of plant-based, you know, so we say if you can't do a meatless Monday, try and start with like maybe a no cook Monday, something where, and that will eventually lead you to a no meat Monday. But yeah, so again, it's all about starting off with like these small achievable steps.
Right. That's a great, like, yeah, great example of like the knock-on effects that we often don't think about. Just, you know, it's not just the meat, but it's the preparation, cooking, and that's great. Let me see here. We have another question. I think you touched on this in our first question a little bit, but one from Richard Haskell here regarding the top 3 behavioral changes that we should know about. And I think you talked a little bit about that, but I don't know if you'd like to touch on that one more time.
Sure. So I think I mentioned lighting is generally the number one because it's one of the largest costs for any household, and it's one of the easiest switches that you can do. So it's not about, you know, install solar panels. It can be like, let me install LED light bulbs, and that's a totally achievable thing that, you know, people might not always make that connection, but it definitely matters so much. So the second thing is your HVAC systems. So heating and cooling, very important in California. I personally cannot live without the heater the minute it dips below 70. And I know in summer, it's pretty much, you need AC to live. But it doesn't necessarily have to be about, you know, throwing it on full blast, or if someone's not in a room, there's really no point in having the fan on or the AC blasting. You know, you can turn those off when you're not using, when you're away from home, things like that. And then of course, keeping the filters clean or changing them appropriately and on time. And just consider like, what allergens do I have? Do I have pets? Things like that. And it might contribute to you having to swap those more often, so you're not making the appliance work as hard. And then the number 3 one is actually about water heating. So I've mentioned that water is a very poor conductor of heat and of electricity. And so you're using a lot of energy to heat water. And so whenever you have a chance to use an appliance and you don't have to heat water, you would take that chance. So most washing machines nowadays, they have an option for tap cold. So that's just using water as it comes out, not heating at all. And, you know, back in the day, like I know my mom definitely grew up with the kind of like, no, it's not going to get clean if you don't use hot water. But detergent has changed, the formula has changed, so it gets just as clean now if you use cold water as hot water. So that's definitely like a huge savings you can do. You can wait until you have a full load to wash so that you're not, you know, using over much. It's the same with your dishwasher, run it on cold. If you can hand wash for like small things so you don't have to run a full load, that's definitely something else. Like water and energy are so intertwined in California, especially because we don't have a great local supply. So a lot of times, you know, it's about the transportation of it. And that is, of course, also an energy issue. So things that also minimize water usage or use it efficiently, or use cold water more than hot water. So those are basically the top 3 behavioral changes I would start off with.
Yeah, that's really helpful, really actionable stuff for all of us. So thank you for that. The answer to this might be the same, but you've talked about small businesses too quite a bit tonight, and I'm wondering how if what Energy Upgrade California advises small businesses is the same as what they advise homeowners or renters or whatever in terms of behavioral change. Is it the lighting and the HVAC and the water, or are there different suggestions that you would make to like maybe a small business owner in Claremont or you know, in our region on ways that they could save energy and save, you know, money during these tough times?
Yeah, so I mean, about lighting and about the HVAC, that's definitely something that carries over. Another thing we like to emphasize for small business owners is the use of natural light, especially in places where a display is important. So if you have a bookstore, there's a reason why so many of them will have their displays up in the windows. It takes advantage of natural light. You don't have to use a ton of light bulbs to like light up the display specifically, because you're taking advantage of putting it right up there where they're going to catch a lot of natural light. So it's a lot about placement. And so one of our partners is the California Green Business Network. And so they actually have essentially a certification program where they walk businesses step by step. How can you become a green certified business? It's by following these. And so it's a checklist similar to ours. And we also have a small business checklist up on our resource page. So any business can go and say, what am I already doing? What can I do more? And then once you check those all off, you might as well apply to be a green certified business, because that is an additional marketing opportunity, and it does connect you with a lot more eco-minded consumers. So yeah, it has multiple benefits. It's good for your bottom line, it's good for the environment, and it connects you with, you know, this rising percentage of consumers. I believe this is actually the first year where it was 51%. So finally, a majority of consumers said, yes, I would be willing to pay more for a product if I knew it was, you know, sustainable or eco-made, things like that. So we're seeing this large cultural shift in consumer demographics as well, as to like where the importance of sustainability is. So yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see here.
I've got a question, if unless you have one you want to do.
Go ahead, Angela.
First. Yeah. Well, there's a couple. I'll pick one of them. You mentioned early in your presentation that Energy Upgrade California has a home energy audit, which is I'm assuming it's just an online tool that you go through. Mm-hmm. And you said you can go through room by room. One thing I was just curious about is with sun and natural light, how much do window coverings influence a home's energy use, or is that something that's included in your audit? Like, you know, shading or extra layers for insulation and that kind of thing. Do you have any idea how much that contributes to energy use?
Yeah, so, my mind is not math based, so might be a couple percentage off, but I want to say it's about 10 to 15% on your lighting bill when you partner things like, for instance, in the morning, it's a little crisp, but there's a ton of natural light. So I'm going to open the blinds and use that natural light as I work. Then it's, 2 p.m., it's getting way too hot, and so I'm going to close the blinds so that my AC doesn't have to work as hard to cool the room. So it's like, essentially matching up with what's going on outside and trying to use the natural environment to your advantage as much as possible. So lining it up so you can do things like that, it's about a 10 to 15% difference in just your energy bill.
That's amazing. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, another easy fix, right? Another thing that we can all do, with fairly low friction to make a big dent in our bill and our energy use. So that's great. Yeah, see, this is maybe like an unfair question for you. But since we know that your focus, or the focus of the organization now, is more on behavior change, if there are folks in our network who are looking to make upgrades to their home appliances as a way to improve home efficiency, are there resources that you can point us to? Is it SoCal Edison, or are there other resources that we can look to for information about rebates on energy appliances and upgrades of that nature?
Yeah, definitely. So I know we used to do those directly, but we are a program under the Public Utilities Commission. And so that commission actually encompasses Southern California Edison, PG&E, SDG&E, all of those. So it's not that we're not directly tied to it. It's that now the individual utilities handle that program, just because California is a huge state and we had to break it out by region. So assuming everyone here is Southern California Edison, I would direct you to their website. And it's all about, programs that they have for home rebates, sometimes small business rebates as well, depending on the changes you want to make. And yeah, that's definitely a resource.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions from anybody who's standing by and
yeah,
watching?
Anyone in the audience want to raise their hand? We love to hear your voices.
We've cleared through most of our questions here. Give people a minute here. But yes, he might be off the hook if we're all out of questions here. Richard, did you want to ask anything about the Village South that you had brought up prior to the?
Oh, here's Freeman, I think. Freeman, are you about to ask
Yeah,
a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure can.
Okay. I was wondering, do you have a recommendation on what the best sort of AC system is? You know, they're electrical power, they're gas power, they're geothermal energy. Do you have any suggestions about what the best system is there?
Sure. So what you want to do is look for the Energy Star logo on any appliance that you get, because that's going to mean it's up to the latest EPA standards. And so often if you go through, for instance, Southern California Edison for a rebate program, they will exclusively recommend Energy Star appliance models. So that's definitely something to look for. It's a literal star just drawn on the appliance. So when you're out shopping, when you're looking online, you can definitely filter by that and say, I only want to look at Energy Star certified. And that's something to start you off there.
Well, I was wondering, you know, there was an option of heating with gas, so there's the option of heating with electricity. And as I understand it, the requirements are going to be that homes should be entirely electrically operated. Do you go along with that?
So we can't actually take a stance because of the whole renter versus homeowner thing and how it's not always an option for people looking to upgrade. So oftentimes it's determined by their building. So because of that, we're unable to take a stance, but I mean, more commonly what we see is electric.
Great, thanks for that, Yessie. Anybody else? So Yessie, one more quick thing here on my list. One of the things that you've mentioned a number of times is how California is fortunately on track to hit many of the goals that had been set for us to reach by 2030. You know, despite all the challenges and despite, you know, the blip, you know, the increase of emissions and single-use plastics because of COVID. Is there a sense that perhaps some of the benchmarks, you know, the goals to hit by 2030 were not ambitious enough if we're, you know, ahead of schedule to hit those?
Yeah, and you'll see that play out in the legislature every session. So I think last year was when they tried to do SB1, and that was like, well, what's our timeline to go for 100% renewables? And can we be more aggressive with that? And so that's definitely something you'll see emphasized at the legislative level. And even honestly, what I've seen reflected in neighborhood councils and just like local groups. You know, people know their neighborhoods best. And when they say like, no, this is definitely achievable, and they can, you know, bring that to like the legislative side and say like, this is actually what the community says. So that's definitely been inspiring to see Californians not only, you know, be on track despite a lot of efforts, despite a sometimes hostile political environment, besides, you know, the ongoing pandemic, to see Californians not only, you know, run ahead with these goals, but actually say, you know, and we can do more. So that's been like super rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Oh, Richard has his hand up.
All right. Sorry, can I jump in again? I just wanted to follow up on Bob Gehrke's question about diet. And you mentioned that you're really just starting to launch a program on food and its impact on water use as well as energy use, and you link the two together. I'm just imagining that that's going to be a tough road. I mean, people's diets, they're just so wed to what they eat that to be able to make lasting changes, I think it's going to be really tough. But what's your take on it as you begin the process?
So yeah, it's definitely very tough, and it's very complicated when you're a state program and you're essentially telling people from like top down, this is what you should do. That's never received well. So what we try to do instead is empower local voices. So, we want to partner with a food bank and say, we want to give you more veggie options. We want to partner with a local nonprofit who people already know and they already trust. And so when the message comes from them, it's a lot more impactful. So we definitely try to reach people where they are. I know like a common complaint is sometimes the sustainability movement feels a little out of touch. Sometimes people, especially if you go into more rural areas or low-income areas, they say like these tips are clearly not designed for us. It wasn't designed with us in mind. So we really try to partner with local groups, nonprofits, neighborhood councils, chambers of commerce, businesses, and let them find inroads that already exist. And so we reach people where they are that way.
Great.
So just throwing out again, the grant opportunities start in January.
While we're on the topic of food and diet, one of the things that it sort of sparks in my mind is, what we do with the food at our table that doesn't get eaten. And one of the programs here we have a Sustainable Claremont is a community composting program. And over the years, we've always tried to, get people to take up like home composting, community composting. And of course, come January 1st, there's going to be a food waste program in Claremont and throughout California. But is backyard composting or community composting another avenue that Energy Upgrade California looks at as a way to, it's averting CO2 emissions through the composting process? Is that another avenue that you all try to promote and educate on as something that we can all do at home, low cost, no cost action?
Yeah, so last year, back when, events were a thing, we partnered with Culver City a couple times. They had compost workshops for the community. We'd like to do it with public libraries. It is a little more difficult now just because of the online nature of events. We have to tell people like, oh, you have to go get these supplies, whereas before, usually it was, the event runner, if it was a city or it was a library, they would be providing materials, and so people could get started in a lot easier. So it has been a hurdle, but it's definitely something we want to continue to do in the future, especially as like in-person events come back, hopefully soon.
Yeah, composting is something better in person than, over a screen. It's one of those things that really helps to be together. So that's great. We have another question here from Bob Garricky. The Union of Concerned Scientists had a report out about the extra miles driven by rideshare companies like Uber and Lyft, and how they have to drive to pick up the passengers and drop them off, and then of course to their next passenger, which creates a lot of extra vehicle miles traveled and emissions. And so there's specifically the question about rideshare as a behavior change, but are there other, like including rideshare, other transportation recommendations that you can speak to?
So it's not super a part of what we're involved in, just because we tend to focus so much on energy efficiency, and this is more about direct fuel emissions. But I know just looking at generally what, for instance, LA Metro is doing, there's definitely been this shift to trying to emphasize public transportation with that first mile, last mile connection. So how do you get people to stations, and how do you get people from stations to their destination? And so that means, do we want to link it up with like a bike share program? Do we want to link it up with electric scooters? So there's been definitely that debate. So I would point you more towards like LA Metro and Department of Transportation for that. I am not as knowledgeable as I would like to be, but yeah.
Okay, that's great. Do we have one or two more questions? Well, we've got Yesenia.
Yeah, can I just raise my hand this way?
You got it.
I wonder how many people have signed on to energy aggregation, going 100% renewable energy with Southern California Edison, as opposed to the normal mix that they use. Do you have any information on that, or what we can do to encourage people to go to 100% clean energy?
I don't have their numbers, but I know that they haven't actually had a backsliding year. Well, who knows with this year, because I know applications have gone down, but I know that's generally increased year to year. I don't actually know like strict percentages or numbers. I can try and look those up and get them to you at some point, but it's definitely been a burgeoning program. So it's been encouraging, like the growth that has. Again, it's not something we're directly involved with because we're more on the education side, and so this is more under SCE directly. But yeah, generally just from what we hear from them, it's been going well, and they've seen some steady growth.
Boy, that if there's ever an education thing, that's it. You know, if you could educate people the importance of going to 100% clean energy, it seems to me that would be very important.
Oh yeah.
Great question, Freeman. Thank you. Okay, do we have anybody else?
Well, let me ask another one. In
Sure.
terms of green businesses, at one time we had thought of really promoting that, trying to get green businesses to have a certificate they display in their window. And I'm wondering if you've thought of things of that sort. It seems to me that the more you can get businesses to sign up as green businesses and display it in their windows and promote it, the better off we would be.
Yes, so that's definitely something we're emphasizing. So we've got a partnership with the California Green Business Network, and when you're certified through them, so they've got various chapters. Sometimes it's regional, sometimes it's county, but you get certified through one of their chapters, and you get like, you know, graphics for your website, you get a window cling, all that kind of stuff, so you can very much advertise that you are a green business. So we partner with them and we help get the word out about their certification programs. And oftentimes that means, you know, partnering with chambers of commerce and saying, like, this is available to you. There is no cost. You can just get green certified. Go ahead and do it. So that's definitely something we want to emphasize more and more. And we've definitely seen a greater importance just because more businesses are seeing the monetary benefits of that. They're seeing how it impacts the bottom line, that sometimes even if there is an upfront cost, it very much pays for itself. So yeah, that's like one of the more promising avenues. And one of the great things is when we partner with the Green Business Network, we also get an inroads to these businesses. So whenever we have a media opportunity, if, you know, a newspaper reaches out and they want to feature someone, or if we decide to do a video series, then we have this great network of green businesses and be like, hey, you want free PR? So it's very much been a good relationship on that front.
And I think
I've got another one if nobody else is raising their hand.
Angela's got one.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and then this might need to be our last one. We're getting close to the end, but we'll see. Angela, go ahead.
Okay, well, it's kind of a little bit unfair. You're off the hook, Yessie. This one I'm going to turn to as it relates to something you said a little bit earlier about setting energy goals at the local community level and legislative levels locally. We in Claremont have a sustainable city plan, and in that plan we have a whole set of goals around, one of which includes energy use. And I happen to know that someone who's here tonight, Richard Haskell, has been working very hard on gathering data to put a long overdue report card together, or at least to update the plan. And I wondered if he wanted to make any comments in terms of where Claremont is as a community in terms of its energy use relative to goals that may have been set.
Yeah, so I mean, I can definitely tell you that it's less than 30% of California cities that have sustainability plans to begin with. Not everyone even has a sustainability department. Oftentimes what you see is, you know, City of Malibu, Santa Clara, like a lot of the coastal cities will have something because of the direct threat climate change is posing to them. And inland, it tapers off kind of. So definitely when you see Claremont taking the initiative to do this, it's such a positive sign. And then I actually have no access to data on this front. So Richard, if you want to talk more about like that side, like any metrics or whatever that you'd like to volunteer.
Well, you've said a number of things that I can sort of pick up on. I'm just keenly aware of the natural gas use versus electricity use in terms of energy. And of course, you're straddling, since you are associated with both Southern California Gas and Southern California Edison in this area, for example. It's a little tricky for you to be too forceful about anything you say, but I think Sacramento and then the state legislature and the California Energy Commission and notably the California Public Utilities Commission, they are really quite a dual natural tension there. But when they agree on something, you can pretty much count on they've got the truth. And it turns out that in the city of Claremont, we actually import our energy two ways, primarily natural gas and electricity from Southern California Edison and natural gas from SoCal Gas. And it turns out that at the end of the day, 78% of our energy is derived from burning natural gas. And when you think about the state goals of 100% renewable energy sources by 2045, it just is stunning. And if we are indeed one of the cities in that 30% who have an articulated sustainability plan, it just makes you think about the goals that the state is up against. I mean, they really, as you say, have had a perfect score. That is, thus far, they achieve the goals they set, maybe even a year early. So it's impressive, but I am concerned as I look at the city of Claremont and everyone else outside the city looks and says, oh, we're very sustainable, we're a sustainability leader, but from the inside, it doesn't look that way. I'm just very concerned and humbled by the knowledge that I've gotten by sitting on the city sustainability committee and being privy to the statistics, the usage of energy within the city. Does this sound a little, I mean, I'm not discouraged, but I just see a real challenge here. You may, I think you've no doubt run into this in the work that you, particularly in LA, which is a major challenge.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see community groups, we see neighborhood councils coming together and say, like, we're doing our part. People are changing their individual behavior. Where is the matching side on, industry where you have to match us where we are. We're doing our part. So it's definitely been very frustrating, especially as people, they change their entire lifestyles and they see that it's not making a dent because, a large percentage of energy use is still on the industry side of it's business, it's all of this. So it can definitely be frustrating, but I mean, what political fight isn't? And we keep going.
Yeah, I am encouraged, by the way. If you look at the trends, the slope of things, Southern California Edison, I think, has really been moving towards renewable sources for generating the electricity that they deliver to us. And I think I think you can point pretty clearly to the advent of CCAs, the community choice aggregation. And now Claremont is in one. And so we can easily just go and check the 100% energy box, which makes us feel good anyway. We pay a little bit more, but not, less than 10% more, maybe 8 or 9%. So things are happening, but we really have a long way to go. So anything we can do in terms of behavior, I mean, just choosing the right things. Education is everything. So we're all behind you. to say the least.
That's good to hear.
All right, I think that's a great place to wrap things up here. We're at 8 o'clock and we want to be respectful of Yessie's time. So I just want, Richard, thank you for that that final discussion. I think that's an important way to bring it back to Claremont and just touch on the level of work that we all still have left to do, both individually, you know, as Yesenia's touched on tonight, and as local government and state government, and national, international, all of the above. So Yesenia, thank you again. We'll have a recording of this on our website and on our YouTube channel in the next few days, and we can pass on any of the links that you provided to our network. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to us and we can connect you with Yesenia. And thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, great.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great
Night,
night.
everyone.
Bye-bye.